NFL Hall of Fame class of 2026 review. It's a good class. Drew Brees, Larry Fitzgerald, Luke Kuechly, Roger Craig, and Adam Vinatieri. 5 getting in this time around all players. And who is the best player of this group? I've gone back and forth, and it's opinion based. These are all subjective rankings that we come up with. I actually go with Larry Fitzgerald. Drew Brees, for some, would be in their top 10 list of quarterbacks. For me, he's just outside of the top 10. Larry Fitzgerald, he's a top 5 receiver of all time. Second all time in reception. Second all time in receiving yards, only to Jerry Rice in both categories. He spent his entire career in Arizona. It's not easy to stand out when you're playing in Arizona. You're not playing with the Cowboys. You're not playing with the Steelers. You're not playing with the Jets. And don't get me started on why playing with the Jets is so important. You're playing in the desert. But Fitzgerald was that good, you could not ignore his consistency throughout his career. He had the longevity, but he was also dominant. I was surprised to see he was only a first-time All-Pro once in his career. Really surprising. But he had the Pro Bowls, he has the statistics, and obviously he passed the eye test as one of the greatest receivers of all time. He had good size, not blazing speed, but his defining trait was his hands. Arguably the greatest hands in NFL history. That's another debate. Cris Carter or Larry Fitzgerald? Athletic with making difficult catches, but able to bring him down and secure the ball with those great hands. Gifted with the ability to catch difficult passes, to go up and get that football. He got done in the regular season, got done in the postseason, so close to winning that Super Bowl. He had a great Super Bowl. The Cardinals weren't able to quite pull it off. But one of the most memorable careers in the NFL and a total class act. A player you had to respect. There was no drama with him. And I could say that with this Hall of Fame class, that for a number of these guys here, you would say the same thing. Leaders, high character. They were team first. There was no drama. They were professionals out there, and they didn't make it about their personal issues on the field. I could especially say that about Fitzgerald, Brees, Kuechly, players I watched their whole careers. It's a little different with a kicker. Let me say that. But these players, all of them, had extremely important roles on their teams in one way or another. Now let's go to Drew Brees. Drew Brees, undersized, an underdog. Yet he is one of the great quarterbacks of all time. He played in a quarterback's league. There's no doubt about that. To his advantage. Protecting quarterbacks. When he came to the league, that's when the game really changed. But what I appreciate Brees is, because of his qualities, you could say leadership, competitiveness, accuracy, attention to detail, he would be successful in any era. I'd say that about Larry Fitzgerald too. He was better because of when he played. It was to his advantage. But would he be good in past decades? Going back to the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, yes, he'd be a very good quarterback. Undersized, yes, but he made up for it in so many other ways. He could make all the throws, and one of the most accurate quarterbacks of all time. Second in passing yards, second in touchdowns, only to Tom Brady. That's it. One slight criticism that's been made about him is that he played all of his home games in the Superdome as a Saint the majority of his career. So he played in perfect conditions. That's true. He wasn't a great road quarterback. That's about all you can really say about Drew Brees. And the fact that he only got to one Super Bowl to keep him out of the conversation of the very greatest of the greats, like a top 5 quarterback. Though there was a certain penalty flag that should have been called, of course he would have made it to 2 Super Bowls. But what's done is done. It can't be reversed. But what a long career, what a great career, an absolute winner. I was also surprised to see that I forgot he didn't win any MVPs. No league MVPs. And there weren't more all-pros in his career. But one of the toughest things for Drew Brees was, and why he may have not even been appreciated as much as he should have been, was his whole career pretty much overlapped with Tom Brady. Not only that, most of his career overlapped and ran the same time as other all-time greats, such as Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers. That's crazy. And even the end of Brett Favre's career. So he probably would have won another MVP. Well, he probably would have won an MVP because he never won a regular season MVP if he played it another time because of the quality of quarterbacks he went up against. But the career highlight of Drew Brees, he's one of the greatest regular season quarterbacks of all time. But the 2009 Super Bowl, he doesn't get talked like in the all-time great games like he should. That was one of the greatest Super Bowl performances by a quarterback of all time. Not the most gaudy numbers, but what he did do was he had one of the most efficient, accurate, mistake-free Super Bowls ever. And he really didn't do it with a star-studded cast. I mean, you look at the all-time great quarterbacks and say, well, who really was the best player that he ever had? You know, skilled player, position player, weapon. Jimmy Graham in his prime, you could say, yeah, but that wasn't that long. His peak wasn't very long, but sure, he was fantastic for a couple years. Marcus Colston, okay. Michael Thomas, and he flamed out, and I mean his career just, once Drew Brees left, you know, for one reason or another, his career just faded. But I think the great feather in his cap is that Super Bowl victory, because he went head-to-head against Peyton Manning, and he thoroughly outplayed Peyton Manning. And that's the chink in Peyton Manning's armor and resume, is not being a good postseason quarterback. You know, Brees completely outplayed Peyton Manning head-to-head in the Saints-Colts Super Bowl. So well deserving from Drew Brees. For Drew Brees. Glad he's in. And it was a pleasure watching him. Next, Luke Kuechly, middle linebacker. What is he best known for? He had a short career. And it's always that argument about, oh, will you take longevity or will you take a briefer career of brilliance? And for him, it was that brief, brilliant career. where he had to look out for his health, and he decided that he was going to hang it up at a young age. So we saw him in his prime, really from start to end, being a short career. But getting back to what I was going to say, what was he best known for? Intelligence. These players were not the best athletes. These three guys that I'm talking about, they couldn't just outrun, outlift other guys. Like I said, Larry Fitzgerald, great hands. Yeah, he was a fairly big receiver, but he played the same time as Calvin Johnson. He wasn't Calvin Johnson. He wasn't Terrell Owens. That wasn't Larry Fitzgerald. Drew Brees, as we said, he was a 6-foot quarterback. And Luke Kuechly was not the most athletic. He wasn't the fastest linebacker on the field, but he was the most intelligent. These are intelligent players getting into the Hall of Fame. You think of his instincts, his reactions, the way he was able to diagnose plays and line up the other defenders on his defense pre-snap, right? Knowing what was coming. I mean, that's what I remember seeing his opponents would say. He knew what was coming before the ball was snapped. He was prepared. He was a student of the game. He was probably the greatest cover middle linebacker of all time. He was an incredible tackler. He had, I don't want to say he wasn't a good athlete, but they were better athletes at the middle linebacker position at that time. But he was sideline to sideline. He was in no ways physically limited out there. He was good at everything. I mean, the best middle linebacker in coverage, probably in NFL history, or changed the way the position was played. And you could see how far down he would get in coverage down the field. His tackling ability. He wasn't asked to rush the passer very much, but he was good at it. It wasn't really his responsibility. And you wanted him to be in coverage because he was the best at it. I mean, the highlight of his career was getting the Super Bowl with the Panthers. They fell short, but that wasn't on Kuechly at all. I mean, Cam Newton had a bad Super Bowl, and when you're on defense, you can't control what's going on in the offense. He was also a Defensive Player of the Year. He had the Pro Bowls, the All-Pros. It was a short career, but very well deserving of being in the Hall of Fame. An easy lock for me. I think it probably even took a year too long for him. They made him wait an extra year. Glad to see Luke Kuechly get in. Next, Roger Craig. Now, I didn't get to see his career. I was too young for that, but I enjoy the history of the game, and after all, I am a 49er fan. And, there's been a lot of upset 49er fans over the years because Roger Craig has not gotten in. And I really see both sides of the argument. On one hand, the argument, you can say, well, if it took this long, well, you have to ask why it took this long. If he was a sure lock to be in the Hall of Fame, if he was deserving, should have gotten in years ago. I could see that. And also the career numbers are not, they're good, but they're not overly impressive. Then on the other side, a lot of arguments for him was, well, he was one of the best players on the 49ers dynasty. Very important player. At least before Jerry Rice got to the 49ers, he was Joe Montana's best weapon, at least in the 49ers' second Super Bowl, the 84 team. He had a very good Super Bowl against the Dolphins, and he was Montana's best player, at least for one of those Super Bowls. And he really changed the way running back was played, being a dual threat out of the backfield. Being a very good runner, but having another dimension to his game being an excellent receiving running back. And he opened the door and paved the way for Marshall Faulk and Christian McCaffrey. And he was the first player in NFL history as a running back to go 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving in a single season. Again, only a few players have ever done that in NFL history, and he was the first. Yet I don't really feel strongly one way or another. I've personally, if you just had to say whether he belongs in the Hall of Fame or not, I'm not saying he doesn't, but if you said you have a vote, I actually wouldn't vote for him. Just because as good of a career as he had and being the first 1,000 player, he didn't have that many great seasons. And I'm a little more strict when it comes to Hall of Fame running backs. I think the bar's been set a little low for running backs in recent years that good players have gotten in. And I know it's very hard for the position of running back because of just the toll and the pounding they take on their body, and they tend to break down more easily and quicker than other position players. But I still feel like, there has to be a certain longevity factor. You have to have, 4 or 5 strong years. Some guys get in that, just to me more recently, that didn't quite have enough great years. Like, take Terrell Davis, for instance. I love Terrell Davis. He was so fun to watch. And he was on the Broncos. He was with John Elway. But to me, just too short of a career, as good as he was. I would never put Terrell Davis in the Hall of Fame. I mean, I'd put Roger Craig before Terrell Davis. I would. He's a Super Bowl MVP, sure. Terrell Davis. But I don't know. I think there just needs to be some more years for some of these guys. But, I'm not saying by any means Roger Craig is a good choice. But there is some reasons I feel that are valid why it took this long. And, to be fair, too, some guys are just honestly overlooked. Like Randy Gradishar, the linebacker for the Broncos, the Orange Crush Broncos. He was one of the players I thought was one of the most overlooked players for a long time that took way, way too long to get in, that finally got in. So he's the only one I'm sort of, I could say no to him going in the Hall of Fame. Adam Vinatieri, the kicker. And, we think of him mostly as a Patriot, but he spent more years of his career with the Colts than the Patriots. I mean, he has, and a lot of people say, well, should kickers be in the Hall of Fame or not? And I'm for it. I'm pro place kickers being in the Hall of Fame. And of all kickers, I mean, who's had more big moments in their career than Vinatieri? It certainly helped that he was kicking for either Tom Brady's Patriots or Peyton Manning's Colts, because you're going to be in the spotlight. You're going to be a lot of winning. But just take 3 kicks of his career in a Patriots uniform. I mean, 3 of the most memorable kicks there ever was. The kick in the snow, the tuck rule game. One of the most controversial games of all time, but that was one of the most amazing sights we've ever seen, was his kick to win the playoff game against the Raiders in 2001. With the snow just coming down, and it's just, the field's covered, it's all white out there. One of the most interesting, again, controversial games in NFL history, but he made the kick in the snow to win. And then he has 2 game-winning, Super Bowl-winning kicks. in the Patriots' first two Super Bowls with Brady and Belichick in 01 and 03. And I'm not surprised by him being in the Hall of Fame at all. I mean, one of the great kickers of all time, a big game kicker. When the pressure's on, that's when it really matters for kickers. And he delivered in those big moments. And of course, he had the longevity too. Very good, very long career, and a winner. And that's what I can say about this whole group of five. They're all winners. Drew Brees, a winner throughout his career, one of those winning quarterbacks ever. Larry Fitzgerald, yeah, he only got to the one Super Bowl, but as an individual player, total winner, and he did everything he could to get the Cardinals as far as he could as a receiver, and he's the best player in their history. I mean, Drew Brees is the best player in Saints history. Larry Fitzgerald, best player in Cardinals history. Luke Kuechly, I would say, is the best player in Panthers history. Got the Panthers to their second Super Bowl. Did as much as he could on defense. And then Roger Craig, winning 3 Super Bowls with the 49ers, being one of the best running backs in the franchise history. And then Adam Vinatieri with the Super Bowls. He has a hand in, or you could say a leg or a foot, a big role in helping the Patriots and the Colts in winning Super Bowls, as much as any kicker you really can think of. So congratulations to these players, well worthy of entering the Hall.